Logan, Michigan. On March 22, 2011, Summer Inman is assaulted behind the local bank where she works.
It's a small town. When it comes to homicides, they don't have many of them, and the ones they have seem to be very high profile.
Really, everybody knows everybody. It's just a really tight community.
But this isn't a bank robbery gone wrong.
Just kept circling around until he found an opportunity to grab her.
We heard a taser go off and a woman screaming.
It's such a violent attack, and it escalates so quickly.
The suspects were not telling the truth.
It was such a crazy story. There's no way that could have happened.
Within minutes, Summer Inman has disappeared, but the questions remain. Why has she vanished, and who is responsible? Logan, Ohio is located about 50 miles southeast of Columbus. With a population of roughly 7,000, residents describe it as a town where everybody knows everybody. It's famous for being home to the one remaining American washboard factory. But the real draw for tourists visiting the region is the Hocking Hills State Park, the gem of Hocking County, employing many in Logan in the hospitalities trade. Summer Cook comes from a large family of 7 children. Well-liked and regarded as polite and friendly by her community, she meets William Willie Inman at her church at a young age, and the two quickly fall in love. The two aren't together long before Willie proposes to Summer, and they marry. Summer moves in with Willie and his parents, William Billy Inman Sr. and Sandra Inman. And before you know it, the newlyweds are welcoming child number 3 into the world.
What's important to remember about Sandra is that Willie is her only child, and she'd always planned on having a big family. So when Willie and Summer showed up with those grandkids, she treated them as her own children.
In 2004, Willie's father, Bill, starts his own branch of a church called Mercy Ranch, converting his garage into the church. Bill sees himself as a man of God, while friends describe him as hyper, controlling, and scary if crossed. Willie being an only child, he's the apple of his mother's eye.
Junior couldn't do anything without his mom and dad, couldn't keep a job, couldn't do anything, never really grew up. He was just one of those people who just needed mom and dad. He couldn't really seem to get it on his own. They were always there to take care of him. They were always there to make sure he had a job. Whether he wanted it that way or whether that's just the way it worked out, there was never any attempt to go and do something on his own.
It's evident that Sandra has become extremely maternal about the grandkids, but how she feels about Summer isn't quite as clear.
Willie, like his father, is very controlling. On the rare occasions that he allows Summer to leave the house unaccompanied, he times how long she goes for. Although Bill's dreams of starting a grassroots church that welcomes the needy hasn't really taken off, he continues opening his home to people like Adam Peters, who is out of work and in need of a leg up, though the Inmans are not themselves in the best financial shape. Bill and Sandra always hoped for more kids, and it seems they passed that desire on to their son, who is not content with only 3 children.
According to Summer's diary, Willie has told her that he wants to become a practicing polygamist. Not only that, he has already started looking for new wives. So this must have come as quite a shock for his young wife.
Polygamy is outlawed in all 50 states, including Ohio. So it's certainly not legal, and it's also probably something that Summer didn't anticipate being asked to do when she married Willie.
Summer takes the children and moves back in with her parents. They aren't surprised by the stories that she tells them about Willie, as they too have noted changes in him ever since the wedding, that he, like his father, uses the guise of religion to control and manipulate his wife. Summer files for divorce and full custody of the kids.
Well, Willie has really turned this into an acrimonious divorce. And then when the custody battle starts, it becomes really intense.
Summer begins dating Inman family friend Adam Peters almost immediately after her separation from Willie. This inflames tensions with the Inmans, believing Adam is betraying their trust and hospitality. They're not happy that he gets to see the kids more than they do. The Inmans attempt a smear campaign against Summer, falsely reporting to the police that she abuses her children. An effort to influence the custody battle in their favor.
The divorce began and all of the trouble began from there. The Inman family claimed that there was abuse going on, things like that, all kinds of false allegations that were being made throughout the course of the divorce proceedings. Sandra wasn't able to have any more kids after Will was born, and I think that played a huge part in her psychology of all of this. The grandkids became her kids. They weren't Summer's kids, they weren't Will's kids. She always talked about them being her kids. It was very unusual the way she focused on those grandchildren.
The false reports don't produce any results, and the Inmans grow desperate at the risk of losing access to the children. In spite of the ongoing custody battle, things are looking up for Summer. Her new boyfriend is loving and supportive. The young couple are optimistic about their future together and are confident that there's nothing Willie and the Inmans can do to break up the family they're now building. She's now working evenings as a custodian at a local bank, trying to get her life back on track. She always calls Adam after work before she heads home to let him know she's on her way. But little does Adam know this will be the last time he sees Summer. It takes Summer about an hour to finish emptying the garbage cans, sweeping up and mopping the bank. She closes up behind her, cell phone in hand, ready to text Adam that she's on her way home. A whirlwind of thoughts race through Summer's mind. Is this a robbery? Are they after access to the bank? She struggles to break free, but they overpower her.
Summer comes out of the bank and she is trying to make her way to the car. She is abducted at that point in time. They're all dressed in black.
Summer suddenly realizes this isn't a stick-up. These men are here for her. She sees an opening, but the men are too fast. They tase her and force her into the back of their car.
It's impossible to know what's going through her mind at that moment. It's such a violent attack, and it escalates so quickly.
But who are these men, and is Summer in danger? The small town of Logan, Ohio is a close community where most folks know each other. In a town this close-knit, it's hard to imagine a violent crime occurring. Yet on the night of March 22nd, 2011, Summer Cook Inman is closing up the bank where she works a late shift as a custodian when she is approached by two men in ski masks. Friends Kylie Hellman and Emily Hedges have recently decided to take up jogging and are out for some light exercise on the warm March evening. When suddenly, the sound of a taser stops them in their tracks.
Yeah, it's pretty loud, but I've never actually heard it been used on a person before. And her scream was something that I will never forget. It was horrific.
Kylie sees the white car in the dark alley. Though she can't name the model, it bears a striking resemblance to a car often used by law enforcement, a Ford Crown Victoria. The two women are stunned by what they've just witnessed and are eager to get away from the scene to the safety of their own homes. Back at the Cook residence, Summer's boyfriend Adam and her mom Deborah grow increasingly concerned. Summer is extremely consistent and always checks in with Adam before leaving work. As the minutes drag on, the pair worry that something must be wrong.
You know, it's not like Summer to be late, but if she is going to be late, she would usually call or text. And I guess it's possible that something was wrong with her phone, but we don't really know. Adam just had a gut feeling, and he felt he needed to go over to the bank and check it out. Deborah tried to convince him otherwise, but she couldn't.
Back at Emily's house, Kylie and Emily run through possible scenarios, trying to make sense of the strange abduction they witnessed an hour earlier. Given the make of the car, they entertain the thought that it may have been an arrest involving undercover officers. On the other hand, they think they may have witnessed something gang-related, a drug deal gone wrong.
It was nerve-wracking. We're shaking, like trying to think of what we just seen. We're trying to think it was really nothing to make us feel better. I thought it could have just been a big miscommunication over drugs or somebody owing somebody money or just something petty, because in little towns there's really not much going on.
Either way, they know they weren't supposed to have seen what they saw, and they aren't sure what to do about it. Adam gets to the bank and tries the door. It's locked. He knocks, but there's no answer. All signs would indicate that Summer is no longer here. But if she left work, why didn't she call? As Adam turns to leave, something on the ground catches his eye. After finding Summer's phone, Adam goes straight to the police. He explains that it's out of character for her to not have called. He insists that her abandoned phone is clear evidence that something has happened to her. He has no doubt that Willie Inman is involved and asks the officer to question the Inmans immediately. With her nerves rattled, Kylie has spent the last 2 hours at Emily's, waiting until she felt okay to drive home. The two friends say their goodbyes, still without any answers or any clear sense of what they should do with the information they have. Kylie is feeling more settled, convinced her imagination got the better of her. After all, nothing really happens in a town like Logan. Her route home happens to take her past the scene of the incident. As she passes the bank, she is shocked to see a caution tape surrounding it.
And at that point, I seen an officer there taping it off, so I pulled up and asked him what happened, and he said they couldn't give any information out. And that's when I proceeded to tell him I seen what happened. He told me to go to the police station immediately.
The only security footage police have from the bank is of Summer leaving. There's nothing from the back alley, and until now they've only had Adam's insistence that something has happened. But with Kylie's statement, there's evidence that a crime may have occurred. But they have to be sure. So they press Kylie on details of what she saw. Based on the witness report, police now have a better idea that they're looking for 3 suspects. 2 male assailants, and according to Kylie, a 3rd individual, a female, the getaway driver. Though Kylie is unable to provide the license plate, her description of the car gives police something to go on.
Many homicides are committed by someone known to the victim. An ex-husband, for example, would be a primary suspect or a person of interest. But there's no body here, so nobody's talking murder at this point. No one knows for sure what exactly has happened to Summer, except we do know there's an eyewitness that indicates an abduction has taken place. So everyone's hoping at this point that Summer is still alive and that there's still time to find her before it's too late.
An officer is dispatched to the Inman residence. He questions Willie on his whereabouts the previous night. Willie attests that he and his parents were on their way into Logan to pick up the kids when their car broke down. Willie's parents back up his alibi, stating that they were on their way to Logan but never made it. They even offered to turn over the GPS from their car as proof. The officer thanks them for their help, making a mental note of their car, a car that very closely matches the description of the one Kylie Hellman reported seeing. But all 3 Inmans insist that they never made it to Logan. Just a coincidence, perhaps.
So right now there's no evidence from the crime scene and no license ID from the car. So really the only thing tying Willie to Summer's disappearance is the make of the car. Depending on how many other people in the area own that make of car, it's pretty weak evidence. Plus, there's also the issue that Willie's parents have given him an alibi of not being in Logan that night. So right now, the ties of Willie to Summer's disappearance are extremely tenuous.
With still no contact from Summer, Adam and Deborah are desperate to get the word out about her disappearance. They petition friends and family to do what they can to help bring Summer home. All they can do now is wait. Summer Inman Cook has been missing for more than 24 hours. Her boyfriend and parents know something is wrong. She has 3 kids and a stable life and wouldn't just disappear without telling anyone.
In a small town like Logan, a serious crime like this can cause a lot of fear and panic. So everyone's a little worried at this point because it's just so unusual.
The residents of Logan want to believe that stuff like this doesn't happen here. But in October of 1982, 2 bodies were found dismembered and mutilated in a cornfield not far from town.
There were a young couple that was murdered around Halloween in the mid-'80s. And for a long time, that homicide went, for the most part, unsolved. There was someone who was eventually convicted, but that conviction was overturned. It was a rather grisly murder. I went to college with a kid from Logan who used to joke that they never had Halloween because of this murder.
In spite of the sense of fear reverberating throughout the town, the community pulls together in a search to bring Summer home. But so far, the searches turn up no new information. Summer is still missing, and the only thing that police have to go on are the 2 eyewitness reports. On the night of Summer's abduction, there is another witness to the crime, a man named Richard Leake. He comes upon the assault as it's in progress and tries to intervene, but is tased. He recovers and runs to the police station to report the crime. Kylie Hellman spots Richard running from the scene, but in her confusion, she's not sure what role he plays in the chaos unfolding before her.
So we have 2 eyewitnesses that come forward independently to police, and they're both questioned. The point here is that investigators want to compare the individual statements for similarities and differences to try to ascertain what the truth is.
After an intense interview process, Kylie is free to go. On her way out, she sees Adam, whom she doesn't know, petitioning police to look for a man named Willie Inman.
He was pacing around like he was a nervous wreck because his girlfriend was gone, and the cops just was not going to do where they was telling him to go. So they was really upset and aggravated because they knew exactly what was happening.
Kylie is tired and just wants to go home, but she notes one other man, a stranger, only there's something familiar about him. There are complaints that from the time Richard reports the assault, police waited too long to act.
They actually checked with the adult probation. They thought maybe that this was something legitimate law enforcement-wise. They were a little less enthused right off the bat.
But by the time they did act, Summer was long gone, leaving no trace, no clues, nothing for police to go on. Deborah finds her daughter's diary, and given the gravity of the situation, decides to read it. She and Adam pore over it for clues as to who might abduct her. But the diary doesn't tell them anything they don't already know. Summer's diary paints a picture of a domineering, verbally abusive husband. Willie, like his father, is very controlling and used religion to justify his treatment of Summer. They discover that several times Willie threatens to kill Summer if she ever took the kids. Given how unhinged and controlling Bill can be, Adam isn't surprised to learn the depth of his son Willie's violence. Adam recounts for Deborah when he and Summer went to the Inmans for Summer's things after the separation. He accompanies her because Summer doesn't feel safe going herself. They never did get her things, however, because Bill explodes at the sight of Adam, calling him a backstabber for betraying his family, and threatens to kill him.
Everybody always thought Will Sr. was in charge, and in some ways he was, but he was in charge in a respect that he wanted to keep Sandra happy.
After the divorce, Willie is ordered to pay Summer $150 a month, which is roughly a third of his annual salary. That and the fact that he's suing her for custody and losing that case shows that there's a clear motive here for why he might want Summer out of the picture.
Deborah is desperate to find Summer before it's too late. She wants to do what she can to help the investigation, even if it means turning over her daughter's private diary. The diary paints a picture for the investigators of a troubled marriage and nasty divorce Summer had with Willie Inman. They discover that Willie wishes to be a polygamist with multiple wives and a dozen or more kids, and that when Summer refuses, she has no choice but to flee with the children. The diary details the ways the Inmans try to make Summer's life hell, filing false reports of abuse in an attempt to take the children from her.
The idea of a random homicide, as much as it plays in Hollywood and things like that, doesn't really come true. Most of the time it is someone you know and someone very close to you.
On the night of March 22nd, 2011, Summer Cook Inman closes up at the bank after finishing her night shift as a custodian. She has her phone out to call her boyfriend and let him know she's on her way home. But she never gets to place that call. Summer is abducted, and the question of whether or not she's still alive remains a mystery. With the clock ticking and no new leads on Summer's whereabouts, investigators turn back to the Inmans. The accounts in Summer's diary paint a picture of a very volatile relationship with the whole Inman family and their desire to have custody of the kids at all costs. They appear to be the only ones with any motive for abducting Summer. So officers obtain a search warrant for their home and their car, and the Inmans are taken in for questioning.
Detectives are interested in this car that Willie has because it's unique. It matches the description provided by an eyewitness. Detectives discovered that Willie and his dad obtained it from this police department, and they were planning to convert it. They were going to remove the police decals and the lights. They tell Willie that the car was spotted in town near the bank where Summer went missing. But Willie insists that the car broke down and he and his parents never actually made it into town.
Officers don't get any further with Willie's father, Bill. He tells them the same story as his son.
They said they were scheduled to have visitation that day with the kids. They called during the afternoon and said that their car had broken down and that they weren't going to make it to Logan.
Investigators present Willie with excerpts from Summer's diary, accusing him of being emotionally abusive, manipulative, and controlling.
It was that diary that showed us a lot of what was going on in the Inman house, what Summer was frustrated with, what she was afraid of. There was all kinds of mental pressure, mental abuse that was being inflicted upon her.
They state that he's the only one with motive to abduct her. But Willie contends it's Summer's word against his, and that he's a loving father, and that the custody battle is what anyone in his situation would do to see their kids. While the suspects are being questioned, investigators collect evidence and discover the GPS that the Inmans had earlier offered up as proof that they weren't in Logan that fateful night. With the Inmans' GPS in hand and their alibi on the line, investigators make a shocking discovery.
The GPS that was located within the vehicle and then investigated found that the suspects were not telling the truth. If the GPS contradicts their alibi, why did they offer it up for evidence?
They didn't realize how it worked. This was in the days when smartphones were just getting started. It was an old dash-mounted Garmin, for lack of a better term. So they just assumed that if you didn't program in a specific address, then it wasn't following you. They had programmed different addresses in Cleveland for houses that they were looking at purchasing. They were in the business of flipping houses back then.
In fact, it was tracking them the entire time.
So when agents from BCI and the FBI and local law enforcement went to speak to them, they offered it up and said, no, we've been up in Cleveland, you can check the GPS, these are all the houses we programmed, and here's where we were on the side of the road. Well, once we forensically examined it, we saw that there were many, many places other than what they said they were. During the course of that period, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, local law enforcement, Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation were all working diligently trying to find Summer's body. We were looking at different locations along the route that they had traveled the night Summer went missing, trying to see if there was anywhere where we might find her body or other evidence. The FBI had traveled along their route looking at any place where the car had stopped for more than a couple of minutes with cadaver dogs and other things in an attempt to locate her. And it didn't take long for us to realize that they were in Logan that day and just kept circling around until they found an opportunity to grab her.
The GPS further shows that the next day, the Inmans take the car to a car wash, where surveillance shows all three of them, but not Summer. From there, they take their car to a salvage yard, where they trade out their tires for used ones. The body of evidence against the Inmans is growing. Their alibi no longer checks out. According to the GPS, they were in Logan at the exact time that Summer is abducted in the alley. Additionally, a car matching the description of theirs is spotted fleeing the scene of the crime.
At this point in the investigation, the Inmans are the only ones with a motive to want Summer out of the picture. And with their alibi falling apart, it really doesn't look too good for them at this point.
Investigators present Willie with the evidence against him, fully expecting that he'll crack and tell them where Summer is. But Willie is obstinate and refuses to admit he had anything to do with Summer's abduction. They present Bill with the same evidence, asking him to come clean and tell them where Summer is. But like his son Willie, Bill is a steel trap. He gives them nothing.
The Inmans are not cooperating with the police. In fact, they're stonewalling. With every hour that passes, the odds of finding Summer alive are decreasing.
But when the investigators present Sandra with their evidence and tell her they know she lied to provide an alibi for Willie, they find a crack in the case. When presented with the mountain of evidence, the guilty-ridden Sandra Inman finally breaks.
Sandra sees the writing on the wall, and she tells police everything in exchange for a plea deal. There's no other way out.
She explains that the plan was only ever to scare Summer, that they never meant to hurt her.
Willie knew Summer's schedule, that she'd be cleaning at the bank that night, so the Inmans waited in the car for her out in the back alley.
According to Sandra, the whole thing is her plan. She gets Bill and Willie to apprehend Summer so that she can talk to her, mother to mother. She wants to convince her to let them have custody of the kids. But Summer is uncooperative. She tells the Inmans that they're never going to see the kids again. She fights with Willie to let her go. Willie loses his temper and puts a zip tie around her neck. He tightens it. Summer is being strangled to death.
The lights were going crazy, the wipers, and it seemed like it lasted forever.
The three Inmans claim they frantically tried to find something in the car to cut it off, but no luck.
That was one of the things that was brought up at trial. There was no intent to kill and that it was all an accidental thing. There's no evidence that it was accidental. The zip ties around the hands to keep her from struggling, and then the zip tie around the neck was so tight that it left ligature marks and everything else. The autopsy showed that there was bruising. We know that it was on long enough before she died to bruise. And there were multiple things found in the car that if had it been an accident, they could have easily cut the zip tie off.
On March 22nd, 2011, Summer Inman Cook dies from strangulation in the back of the Inman's car. Sandra Inman confesses to being an accessory to the murder of Summer Inman Cook. For days, investigators and Summer's family have held out hope that she may still be alive. Now, with Sandra's chilling account of the events, all hope is lost. Though the question still remains, where is Summer's body? Sandra tells investigators that after leaving Logan, they drove to Faith Tabernacle Church near Nelsonville, the very church where Bill and Sandra were married. And it was there that they dumped Summer's body in a septic tank. Investigators recover Summer's body from the tank. They first find her foot, indicating that she was put in the tank head first. The detective conveys this to Sandra, who seems relieved, contending that the whole thing was an accident. That Summer was like a daughter to her.
There was a church not too far from Logan where Will and Sandra had married. That's where her body was discovered. They took it there, removed the cover for the septic tank, and her body was placed into the septic tank at that point in time. There was obviously pre-planning in doing this. If it was accidental, why would you dump her body? Why not, stop and call the police and tell them that there was an accident? This was all to make Summer disappear so that Will could get custody of the kids as their father. And that's what this was all about. This was about the grandkids.
Well, this is always the worst part of the job. No parent wants to outlive their child. So having to tell a mother that their daughter has been murdered, there really is no easy way to do that.
Sandra's plea deal means that her case doesn't go to trial. For her cooperation, she has given a reduced sentence of 15 years in an Ohio prison for the kidnapping and murder of her daughter-in-law. Both Willie and Bill are sentenced to life in prison.
The local prosecutor worked Sandra's case out. She was not charged with a capital offense and was allowed to plead guilty to one count of murder. We knew that there was never going to be any chance that she was going to testify against her husband or her sons, and we had no intention of ever using her. We didn't feel that even going to trial, the jury would likely impose the death penalty upon her, and a 15-year to life sentence, given her age and other things, probably meant that she would never leave prison, so we were comfortable with that. And it was important to recover Summer's body for the family. We always knew that as far as the killing went, that it was father and son who were more responsible for that. The first thing, obviously, we had to do was decide whether or not to charge it as a death penalty case. The local prosecutor did. So both of these proceeded as death cases. In both cases, they were able to avoid the death penalty.
With her daughter buried and justice served, Deborah looks to the future, her grandkids now in her care. She wonders what life will be like for the children as they grow up, and how they'll cope with everyone knowing who they are.
According to Deborah's friend, her Reverend Michael Martin, the way that the body was disposed of is really the main issue that's affected the community here.
The loss of Summer is devastating for her mother, Deborah, but it's also difficult for the entire community. It's a grisly reminder that the world can be an ugly place, and that it can still reach a tucked-away little town like Logan.
For this community where everyone knows everyone, this is really devastating for them.
But this isn't the first time the community of Logan has weathered a tragedy of this magnitude. And instead of responding with fear, they pulled together to ensure Logan continues to be a warm and welcoming place.
Nobody ever thought anything like this could have happened to such a good person. I try to be a better person, especially now that I am a mother. I just try to live every day like it could be the last.
As Deborah and her husband raise Summer's children, they want them to remember how much their mom loved them, that they were her world, and that their mom will never be forgotten. The Cooks still call Logan home. It's their community, and it's where they want to raise their family, including Summer's children.